thank you everyone for joining me. This is a really exciting but also really important panel. So without further ado, talk me through your job roles essentially, and what the summary is of how you're involved in sport and in North Toronto soccer. So we're on my screen. We're in nice alphabetical order. So Chelsea, we'll start with you first.
Sure. So I just started with NT fairly recently. I came to Toronto from Nova Scotia in September and really just started to work with a variety of different groups across the board, girls, boys, youth, older. So it was only recently, once the League 1 women started, that I've spent most of my time with them. So now I'm with the League 1 OW as the assistant coach with Billy Wilson and Mark Mortar.
I guess that's
Erin?
me next.
Yeah.
I've been with NT for a year now. I came in as the program manager of the Nitros development program. So that's our programming for U8 through U12 boys and girls. And then I'm also the head coach of the 9 and 10 girls within that program.
Okay, looks like me next. I am a coach for NT. So I coach the 09 TSA team. This is my second year coaching with them. I also play for League 1 Ontario, the women. So Chelsea's my coach. And I've been with that team for the last 2-3 seasons. So yeah.
And I joined NT March of 2021, I guess. So it's been just over 2 years now. And I'm our manager of competitive soccer. So I oversee all of our competitive programming, which falls just below our OPDL and above our recreational stuff, from U13 to U18, boys and girls. So there's, I think, 19 teams in the group that I oversee now. And I am the head coach of 2 of those teams. So I've got the U16 and U17 girls this year, which is really fun. And my job, I guess, is to try to make sure that our competitive programming is kind of in line and consistent with, our game model and what's happening throughout the club, and trying to make sure we standardize that environment through the competitive programming. So Jessie's one of the coaches in the program that I work in, which is great.
Excellent. So let's go right back to the start. And it might be right at the very beginning of your memory for some of you. How did you get involved in sport, and then how did that journey take you to where you are today? Again, same order.
Sure. So sports, I think, has always been a part of my life. On the East Coast, there's so much space and time and availability for that it's something that I was always playing sports as a kid. So soccer was always my summer sport, and then in the winter it was snowboarding and volleyball and basketball. So early on I took like a multi-sport approach, just because that's really what helped me develop as an athlete overall and make friends. And then eventually soccer just became the true love. So that's where all my time and energy went. And really getting into coaching was a matter of, I think it was in grade 12, and a teacher said, "We're desperate. My daughter's team is desperate for a coach. Like, would you be willing to just show up and run some sessions and have fun with the girls?" And that was honestly the only entryway point I needed, because I had a blast with it. And I could see right away that, the impact was significant, and that has stayed with me over the last, 10 years. So.
Oh, sorry, Erin?
Yeah, I'll go next.
I was on mute.
I started playing at a very young age. I think I was under 4 playing with boys at a local club called West Rouge. Played throughout my whole life. I had the privilege of having a pretty good coach that some of you may know throughout my playing career. I played for the same club throughout my whole playing career as well. It was West Rouge Soccer Club. Honestly, getting into coaching, I left school. So my background's kind of weird. I was offered a scholarship that I had accepted and then quickly turned down after a week of being there. I came back from school and decided that I needed to do something. So I ended up at Durham College playing on their soccer team there. Went through an array of different programs and then finished doing public relations. Out of college, I started with Durham Region Soccer Association as their district administrator running the leagues and everything. And I had a contact with a club that I started my coaching career at. After that first year of coaching, I thought, this really isn't for me. I had a very bad experience. And then I started with another club, and that's where I really found my footing and who I wanted to be as a coach. It was probably one of the best years of my coaching career. And it really helped shape me into the coach that I wanted to be. And that's where I found like the passion that I have for coaching. And that's where I kind of was like, this is what I meant to do.
I love that.
Okay. Yeah, sport's been a long relationship. I think it started before I was even here. My parents have always been huge sports fans. They continued to play. My brother plays, so soccer's always been the number one sport. It was the VHS tape that ran over probably most of my home videos, different games that were being played. So I grew up watching, grew up playing, same as Chelsea, grew up playing multiple sports. Soccer, field hockey, and basketball were my main sports. And I think that same thing, that kind of cross training really helped me. And then kind of near the end of high school, I specialized more in soccer and went on to play at university at Queen's. Really enjoyed that experience, and then wanted to keep up that high level of play. So I looked for it in the OWSL up until League One was reformed for the women's, and came over to North Toronto. So very happy to still be playing at a high level and still be working on my game and my knowledge and my skill. In terms of coaching, that's something I've been doing since probably about grade 7. I started coaching basketball summer camps, just really enjoyed being around kids, making sports fun, being active fun, making all of the aspects of sports that we all love, something that they enjoy. And so over the years, I've been involved more in camps and kind of one-off coaching, assistant coaching over the years. And then coming to NT, once I've settled in Toronto, I was looking for an opportunity to coach a bit more and give back to the club and give back to the sport I love. So I reached out to NT and was able to get my own team. And it's been a new experience. I hadn't head coached before, so that's been a challenge, but I've been really enjoying it.
So that brings us to me. So much like the rest of our panel, I've had a lifelong relationship with sport that's been all positive. So my dad, much like Erin's, came from Scotland, and golf and soccer were the two big sports for us growing up. So probably two of my earliest sports and the two that I still play the most. But also played a ton of ringette and hockey growing up, basketball, volleyball, badminton, curled. I'm from Winnipeg, so you got to do those winter sports. And I've kind of just always loved sport. For me, it's always been a way to make sure that, I've got tons of friends, you're active, you're healthy. And to this day, the social part of it is a massive part of it for me. And that's what I say to the kids that I coach, that, these are probably going to, hopefully you're going to be my age and you're still going to be playing and going out for, a bite to eat after your game and that type of stuff. So it was always recreational. And I coached, went to university and stuff, didn't play. I was from Manitoba, and we didn't even have a varsity soccer team in Manitoba until I was the age when I was having kids. So it wasn't really an option in Manitoba. Luckily it is now. But I graduated from U of T, and my background's actually law. And so was working sort of in the legal field, but, started to play in Ontario. And it was with a teammate of mine. She was coaching at Nitros, actually. This was back when I was in my 20s. So I actually started coaching, well before I had kids, for about 3 years. And it was with North Toronto, which I always think is really funny now. Then I had my kids and coached with, once my daughter was, I think, 6, I couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore. I had to get involved and started coaching with her, coached her till she was 13 with another club in the area where I live. And I was with that club for about 15 years. And, coached my own kids till, like I say, my daughter was 13, and then started coaching in OPDL and in other programs, and was always doing work in the legal field on the side and on a part-time basis, but was always coaching as well. And eventually the balance just completely switched, where I realized, wow, I can spend more and more time coaching. And, it started to become a paid profession, which was great. And I eventually kind of left doing my other work completely to work in soccer. So it feels super fortunate. It's, given me a lot of great relationships and given me the opportunity to just have contact with so many people as teammates and colleagues and players that I've coached and their families. And I can't imagine a life without sport, I guess.
Excellent. So for those, there's some people out there that wouldn't have started so young and wouldn't have that long-term relationship. So for those people, or people that perhaps haven't considered sport as an option, what would you say? What are the benefits for sport that you found for yourselves, and what and for other women that you've been around? And yeah, talk us through kind of those things that you found in your careers, and not just participation either, but in your administration roles or other things that you've been involved with, not just on the field, coaching as well. Nadine, we'll start with you this time. We'll go backwards.
Oh, okay. So I certainly have seen with a lot of women that I know, it really never is too late to get started. So I have, a lot of friends that I know weren't really active in sports when they were kids that play now, which I think, has, given them a social group, given them, a sense of accomplishment of being able to learn something else at some point, later in their lives. There's a lot of things like I think all of us will probably speak to this, is that it's all those skills, when you do start younger, and I think that's any time in your adolescence, it's all those skills that you learn from sport that I think are a huge benefit to boys and girls, right? For girls in particular, I've found that it's been an entry point into a lot of maybe circles that you wouldn't be able to, enter traditionally. Hopefully that's changing in the world. But I know for me, working in the legal field way back, it was really nice to be able to jump on the ice and be able to skate and go play hockey with whoever was playing, right? It was nice to be able to go and play on the slow pitch team, right? Just kind of exposes you to different people, and often people that are in those, decision-making roles. And like I say, I really hope the world is changing that way. And that, sport isn't necessary to do that, but it's always been, kind of a way to connect with people. Sports also, I think we would all say this, given us great life skills in terms of, problem solving and leadership, and gives you confidence, time management skills, commitment, all those things. I'll probably leave it at that because there's so much we could talk about. I'll leave lots for the other panelists to speak of.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of the things that Nadine said. Like, in terms, we could all talk to it about leadership, teamwork, problem solving, working through conflict, time management. All those skills come with having any type of hobby or any type of kind of commitment outside of what you're doing, and adding more to your life, and balancing those aspects of it. I think that's come into play for me, especially with coaching and playing, like being able to balance, being able to manage it, being able to communicate effectively with large teams. So being my own team or being the team that I coach, being able to be a leader, being able to learn to work with different people within it, whether it's parents, teammates, players I coach. You learn a lot of interpersonal skills on how to communicate with someone during situations that can be sometimes stressful or frustrating or disappointing for someone. Learning how to empathize or communicate what you need to in those moments. Those are some really great skills that transcend just being a teammate, but also into a coach or an administrative role. We have to have some tough conversations at times. So I think those are great areas for sport to develop. And when people are involved in sport, I think the more they get involved, they start to learn different aspects of just being active and being fit. I think for girls in particular, it's important to value our bodies as modes to get around, modes to do what you want to do, and not necessarily just what you see back in the mirror. So I think for girls and even women, just getting into sport really gives them that area that they can focus on, that part about themselves, about, oh my gosh, I just ran 90 minutes for the first time. This is great. Like, or I made that pass, that tackle, and that's that confidence in your own body and your own physical ability, your athleticism. So I think that's another area that sport at any age when you start can start to give you that great aspect.
I think just to go off what Nadine and Jessie said, like, I think socialization is such an important one, especially at the younger age groups. I mean, sometimes these kids are dealing with a lot at school. They might not be able to make friends at school or whatever the case may be. And then they come to soccer and it almost feels like a safe place for them. I know that's something that I always try to drive home in my sessions. Like, this is a safe place. You can come, you can try new things, you can make mistakes. Ultimately, we're going to grow from all of those things. So I think just that socialization, the empathy that we have to have as coaches, dealing with different personalities and different families and different dynamics on a daily basis, is something that I've really taken away from my time coaching. I think NT is a great place to coach because it's probably the first club I've been at that has more than one female coach. So I think it's important that women can jump in at any time. I think it's important that we have females coaching in the game to be role models for our young female athletes. But I also think it's important for parents and the boys in the programs to see that there are women that are coaching and they're doing a bang up job at it. And I think it's important to keep getting more women involved in coaching soccer and sports across the board.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, Erin. Like, there's the big stigma that sport kind of ends at 18. If you don't make a university team or you don't have, you know, some kind of channel to get better and be elite, then you're done. You know, and so I think that that's a huge misconception about sport, because for all the benefits that these three just said, you know, and just about making yourself a priority. So I did, when I was studying at Ottawa U, I was doing my research in coaching masters athletes. And again, it's an area of sport that we don't always consider how impactful it can be on your well-being. Like Erin said, like learning new things, taking healthy risks, getting out and being social. Like there's opportunities to do this, and you know, across the lifespan. It's really just like I said about making yourself a priority, and that can be intimidating sometimes when, you know, we have this conception that sport is just for youth, and then, you know, it's time to step aside and give them that space. But it's like, you know, it's a chance to be able to push yourself a little bit, and maybe you try a new sport in your adult years, and again, that can be intimidating, but there are avenues to really get involved with those things and be around other people who are in the same situation. I would vouch for pickleball as a starting point, but I think it's just about recognizing that there shouldn't really be a cutoff at any point where sport becomes something of the past. It's about how can I transition this now into my lifestyle? What are the benefits and maybe the goals that I have that are going to be different in this sport experience from that one, but still very valuable to everything else that's going on around me. Because at least for myself, like I play recreationally now, but that hour of soccer that I play maybe once a week is a complete mental reset for me. Like everything else that's going on in my life, I forget about entirely for those 60 minutes. And that's a huge wake up call to go, okay, maybe that's not so serious. Maybe I can manage that a little bit easier. And it just gives you that time and space to, you know, really make sure that you're giving yourself what you need, and kind of puts everything into perspective. So I really do see sport as something that should be valued across the lifespan. And really it's about maybe creating some pathways and getting that message out so that women especially know that there is a space for them, and they are a priority and they are wanted in those spaces.
This is like a topic we could like talk about just this in itself, I think, for an hour. Yeah. And I know Mike, you probably have another question, but like, I just want to jump in on what Chelsea was saying. I think it's hilarious because I was thinking pickleball just before you said it, like how many people are getting into that, which is awesome. Right. But it's true. Like I play, one of the only things I actually make time to do, and it's huge to my mental health, is to play my golf on Wednesday mornings, right? With the group. Call it Wednesday, right? Like we all get together on our Wednesday mornings and, you know, whine about our golf. And it's great. There's a woman in our group who's, 25, who's one of the daughters of the other women we play with. And there's women in our group who are now in their 70s. And I think it's a group of 11 of us. And I'm like, how awesome is that, right? And like Chelsea says, it's a complete break. And NT is great. I got to say, there are, the people we work for are always saying, they say to me at least, they're like, make sure you go and play your golf. Like turn off, get away from your phone. Because in recreation, your phone is going all the time. That's truly one of the only times I actually don't worry about work. And I feel so much better when I go back to work or come back to my family or whatever it is, right? Whatever is going on. Like Chelsea says, it just gives you perspective and a break. And then and playing across your life, I'm so fortunate. I actually play recreationally. Like I play soccer with my daughter now. We've played together for the last 4 years. And there's another, player joining our team this year who I coached when she was 6. So when you do hear these kids say, oh, I'm coming to the end of my playing, I'm like, what are you talking about? We had a call for our young coaches who are starting in the club. And we were talking about why you want to get involved in coaching. And they have all these great reasons, but many of them prefaced it with saying, oh, I'm coming to the end of playing. And I thought, you guys are like 16 years old and 17 years old, and you are not coming to the end of playing. So I think that's a great point that, yeah, I think they have this idea that sport is something that you do when you're young, but I think it's something you do, for your whole life. And that's why we say it's sport for life, right? Especially the stream I work in, soccer for life.
Excellent. Good answer. And with that being said, and I think what you've spoken about leads into this kind of two-part question, because both lead on to each other. You'll find out in a minute, but both questions lead on to each other and both answers are very important. So what kind of barriers have you faced as individuals in sport, and or perhaps kind of noticed in other people, and what are the solutions essentially, or the things that you see in your experience at NT, and the good things that you think should be implemented elsewhere, or just general kind of perception changes, and how best a club or an individual can go about doing that, and starting to change those conversations and increase that retention rate. We'll go back round in the same order. Chelsea, do you want to begin with this one?
Sure. Yeah. This is an interesting one, right? Because I think as far as barriers, it depends where you're coming from. It depends what your opportunities were as a kid. It depends perhaps like if you're in a marginalized group. So I guess from my experience, this like mentality of like see it to be it was a little bit maybe lacking in my experience. And that again is because I'm from Cape Breton in Nova Scotia. And so, we always had this mentality of we're going to work our butts off. We're going to, we're not going to shy down to any experiences or opportunities because we're from a smaller club, relative to say like a Halifax club. So for me, sometimes it was really a lot of self-doubt. And I think that came from, not always having a concept of what was achievable. So I was very lucky in the sense that I did have opportunity to play soccer my entire life. And I did have a couple of female coaches, and I was able to challenge myself and be challenged in a way that allowed me to make sure I was always reaching my potential. But sometimes I didn't know what that potential was. So I think sometimes it's about really just building confidence in young girls, especially to say like, there's absolutely no reason, and there shouldn't be, a single doubt in your own mind as to why you can't achieve whatever level you want to achieve. And then again, giving them a concept of what is successful. So like what might be successful to some is making a university team. So for me, that was my successful point. Is I was lucky to have, role models at Cape Breton University. And that's what I wanted to be. And that's what I was able to reach. But similar to what we were just talking about, aging out, like, that's where it ended for me. I never had a concept of, oh, well, maybe there's professional opportunities. Maybe I can coach as a career. I wasn't thinking about that. So really for me, I think it's just about like making sure that girls in sport who have that passion and want to stay in sport in a variety of different roles are aware of the plethora of opportunity that there actually is for them.
I think that's such a good point that Chelsea just made, and Nadine touched on it earlier. Like a lot of these female players think that their playing career is stopped at 16, 17, 18, but there's so many more different avenues that they can adventure out into to continue playing, whether that be college level, university level, recreational level. Like there's so many different ways to stay involved in the sport that we all have come to love. And I think it's just about them believing in themselves, like Chelsea mentioned, and not saying like, this isn't something that I can do anymore. I can touch on that because of the experiences that I had. I touched on it earlier. I was given multiple scholarships. Nadine knows this story. Went down to Phoenix, Arizona, accepted one, and came back a week later. Did I give it a fair chance? No. And I think part of that was because I was doubting myself. Like, can I actually do this? Can I actually be out here, compete at this level and be good at it? I think that was part of it. And if my family watches this, they're probably going to be like, Erin, you're an idiot. But I think those are the things that players go through. Like they do start doubting themselves and thinking like, this isn't something that I can do. I'm here because I know people or somebody knows somebody else. And that's why I was given this opportunity. I think that was in my head a lot. So I think it's just about players knowing that there are those different avenues and really believing in yourself and not selling yourself short for what you want to do.
I think, I can echo a lot of those things. I think in terms of where there's solutions for those moments where there's barriers where we don't believe in ourselves, we don't see the expectation that we can reach or the standard that we can reach. I've had in the past coaches that have fostered that environment in myself where this is all that we can do. We can just, you're like a workhorse. And I've had coaches that have really valued my development as a player for the long run. They're not just thinking for that season or for those moments. And they really coach me in a way that allows me to develop and raise my standard and believe that we can be even a little bit higher. I can speak to that for what we do at NT. They're constantly trying to push us to be a better player, and they're not trying to keep a ceiling. I think the expectation for women's sport is that it's women's sport, and the highest you can be is women's sport, and that's got a ceiling to it that people don't want to quantify, but they don't expect female players to push beyond that and have greater skill or greater ability or greater knowledge of the game. And so I think when we have coaches that believe that players can intake that information, can execute what they're asking for, that gives you belief that you'll be able to handle different situations and you'll be able to keep excelling and keep improving. But we've touched on it before about being that coach that can empathize and go through those situations and help players work through when you have failures, when you have setbacks. If we can do both those things, both believe in them, but both understand when you fail, how do you pick yourself up and how do you move forward? So I think in my youth career, there was moments there where I was on teams where I didn't have that support as coaches. And I was fortunate that I had some great coaches when I was younger that did offer me that. Other areas that I've seen barriers is just in terms of the environment. I don't see it at NT and I have never seen it, but that environment where it's a negative, it's toxic in terms of your teammates, your players, those are moments where I almost stepped out of the sport because I couldn't handle going to practice every single day and dealing with players and feeling exiled or removed from the group. Those were really barriers for me. And so I think that's a moment where coaches can really have a strong influence on making sure that the dynamic and the team morale is good as it can be and that there's positive interactions between the players. That's a huge thing for me. And it's one of the things the girls I coach know that's what I'll get mad at is if you're not treating your players with the respect that they deserve, your teammates and your opponents. So those are two of my biggest barriers probably in youth. Moving into kind of beyond, like we talked about the 18, I'm one of the few probably players that have kind of kept going. I look at the players I played with in high school. I looked at the players I played with at university, and our pool of players is severely diminished over the last few years. And I think there's a lot of barriers that before League One, there wasn't a great league for high-level women's soccer. Like there was the OWSL, which had a few teams. But I remember going out to games and there'd be 7 players we were playing against, or we'd travel and they wouldn't have enough players. So it was definitely a frustration to be able to play good quality soccer, to be valued for that as well. So that's changing. It's starting to change. I'm hoping it's changing quickly because that will keep more players for longer and show them that there's more opportunity, especially for the higher level. And then if we can raise those up, then everyone else will raise up as well too. We'll have other programs that can support the players that don't quite make it to that level, but are able to still play at a competitive, fun environment. And then the last barrier, I think, for women is the family, the balance between, having kids, balancing family life, balancing all the demands. Sport is great, but sometimes it's played at like 9 p.m., which makes it tough. When you get home at 11:30, you get up at 6, and just those balances between life and sport play a little bit more. And I think for women, we're typically more family oriented or can be, and that can put a barrier that we have to navigate.
So much good stuff. It's hard to know where to jump in. So so agree obviously with everything everybody else has said. And I guess I come at it a little bit differently just in that I'm quite a bit older. So in terms of barriers faced, thankfully I am seeing, I think, a really significant change. Even in the last 5 years, I've noticed it, or even like 3 years. So, like I say, I started coaching before I had kids, and there were very few, if any, female coaches. Luckily, there was, the friend of mine and myself. When I started coaching in OPDL, so I coached in the first season, which was 2014 as an assistant. And really until I'd say just the last couple years, I saw very few female coaches, which was really tough. So it does kind of bring us back to, I think something Chelsea said with, when you don't see it, you don't think about it. So not having those role models, it was difficult to often go in and be like the only female in a room, right? And we've talked about this a lot on coaching courses, and you go to like OSA meetings or this, coaching conferences, whatever it might be. For a really long time, you were very much in the minority if you were a female involved in the sport. And I think we're still in the minority, obviously, but it's sad to say, obviously, but we are. But I am seeing a big change recently, which is awesome. At our club alone, I think 4 out of our 5 program managers are now female, which is great. Other barriers, I think, stereotypes that we face that, sport isn't for you, like this isn't a place for you. So, and I think sometimes kids do listen to what they hear, and they are influenced by what they see. I think social media is huge. I know, even though we're much more aware of this topic now and what the benefits of girls being involved in sport are, we're seeing like lower registration numbers, especially after the pandemic, which is really concerning. Our club is doing really well, but I'm concerned year after year when I look at our leagues, and Jessie plays, the team she coaches plays in one of these leagues. Our numbers are really small. Like, we're merging leagues and we still have, such a small number of teams, even when leagues are merged. So I keep thinking, where are the girls? And I think a lot of them are kind of on their phones. I think those phones are also making them, not phones and screens make them feel like they have to be perfect at things. So I think anxiety and perfectionism is a big barrier to getting involved in things. I'm amazed at how often I hear the girls that I coach talk about anxiety. And one of them made like just a flippant comment. She was just kind of joking around, but I know she meant it. She goes, "Oh my God, Nadine, we're anxious all the time. We're anxious about everything." And it was, we were combining with another group to train that was at a higher level. And I can't tell you how much these kids were worried about being judged and how anxious they were about making a mistake. And all the kids were great and all supportive with each other, but that's what they're going into. So if you haven't played sports before, or if you haven't coached before, if you haven't done any of these things before, it's really difficult, I think, to step in. And I hope we're going to continue to start to see these things change. I think mindset's a barrier of, like Jessie touched on this, that toxicity. So the environment, sometimes parents put a ton of pressure on their kids, and that can be a barrier to them participating and enjoying sport. Coaches can. So I think we have to reframe what it is that, we define as success. So what can we do, I guess, as you said, what can clubs do to help? I think our club is doing a ton. I think, as we say, if you can't see it, how do you know that you can ever do it? We have a ton of female coaches now, which is fantastic. The kids I coach actually said, they're like, "Wow, Nadine, we didn't really, we never had a female coach before. We didn't really know that it could make a difference." And they've loved all the coaches they've had, male, female, but there's certain things that I think they do find different with having a female coach. And now they're all getting involved in coaching in our recreation program, which I'm really happy to see. As I say, the club is really supportive of the female managers here. 4 out of 5 of us are female now on our sort of our program management team. We have a female kind of support, female coaches support group that we all kind of participate in, just to kind of help, bounce ideas off each other. And I think that helps keep us in the game. I think something else clubs need to do is to listen to their female participants. I think organizations need to do that. Keep hearing about organizations wanting to be more flexible and to listen to feedback. And I think sometimes everyone talks a good game, and that doesn't always happen. I think our club listens. I don't always think our sports organizations listen. Yeah, I think that's probably it. It's a lot. We all said a lot.
No, all good. Thank you. So if somebody wants to get involved, be it a parent thinks, "Oh, this might be good for their child," or someone older wants to get involved in recreationally, what or in any matter really, whether it be volunteer on off the field, that kind of thing, how can they get involved? And you can also use this opportunity to say anything that we haven't covered in this call that you think is important. So kind of how to get involved and key messages really. We'll go backwards again. Nadine?
Oh no, you're making tired of hearing me speak. So I think there's different ways to get involved. And again, I guess it depends on what role you're looking to get involved in. I think for playing for women, just look, get on Google and figure out what's available in your area. There's lots of recreational leagues. I play in a very recreational league, in the winter that clearly has people that have just started. So I think that's awesome, right? So I think there's lots of ways just to find ways to play that are just for fun. And like, as Chelsea says, whether it's pickleball or soccer, whatever sport it might be, look to see what's available in your area on a recreational basis, and grab a friend and go. We say that to our young kids, like bring a friend, it makes it easier. I don't think that's any different for adults, right? I think we all have a little bit of social anxiety at times to go when it comes to going out to doing something new. So get a friend and go. At the club, I think one of the best ways to get involved, I know with my program, is we have a lot of parents that volunteer to help with our teams. So we have team managers, and I have parents there who often, moms or dads or caregivers who are like, oh, I've never been involved in sport, and they're worried to step up. Like they think they need to have some grand base of knowledge or experience, and they really don't. We're just thrilled to have people that want to help, and we will guide them through it. So that's a great way to get involved with your kids. I think just playing with your kids and coming out and tossing a ball around on the side. I think it's so important for kids to see their parents be active. And again, so not thinking, again, I think we always think we have to do things so well. So I think it's really important for parents to model that behavior and say, it doesn't always have to be perfect, right? Just, bring along a ball when you're going to go watch, rather than just sitting with your coffee or your tea and do something on the sidelines, right? Boards of directors are also, I think, a fantastic way for people to get involved in sport and really have an impact. I can't overstate how important that is. And I think having diverse representation in those spaces is really important. So, if it's not on a field or in a rink or whatever it might be, look at getting involved with a board.
Yeah, not sure how much I'll be able to add to what Nadine said. Covered a lot of the areas to get involved. I think, girls in sport, women in sport, like looking for any group, talking about bringing a friend or go with a friend, or just be willing to kind of open and meet someone. So there's lots of programs out there for the recreational, for the high level, athletes that want to keep playing, connect with coaches, connect with programs. We're fortunate to have a large program of NT that has a lot of areas for you to play in. So connecting with those coaches, thinking beyond your years. So whether it's high school, whether it's university, when those, structured years of sport are coming to an end, looking beyond that and what kind of you can balance it. I think teams have done a good job of trying to balance that with people's careers and what they want to do. So just look for it. It's there. It's growing. It's coming more and more. I think we've got exciting times ahead for more high-level sport to keep going with it. And then other ways to engage in sport, like Nadine talked about, managers or being involved in board directors, being the kind of the back office of things. Getting engaged that way can be a great way. There's lots of things going on in terms of the female sport movement. There's newsletters that go out. There's emails. There's projects that are going on. So reach out to them. Take your family out to events. There was the WNBA event this past weekend. There's more events that are coming for women's sport. So looking for ways to emulate that and show that you're supporting it would be a great way to kind of show your family, if you've got kids, like to show them like women's sport is just growing at this moment, and we should be there to support it. So I think those are great ways. And being involved, even just going and kicking your ball around at the park or any sport with your kid, showing them that it's okay to fail, it's okay to be a little bit clumsy at times, but valuing being active for life is something you can emulate. And I think all of us here try to do that for everyone in our lives, and emulate that women should be involved. If it's a pickup thing, I think Nadine's touching on it with a boardroom. If they're going to play golf, like say I'll be there. Like if there's a corporate event or community event, like don't be afraid to put yourself out there to be involved in the sport. I think a lot of women are afraid how they'll be perceived, but the more we step into those environments, the more we'll be welcomed to those environments. We just need some people to be those leaders to step forward. And the last thing I'll just touch on would be Nadine's comment on the stereotypes. I think Nadine and I had conversations during my first year of coaching. Is there's a huge stereotype on what a coach is supposed to be, and not necessarily all female coaches fit that. Nadine's got a nice loud voice. I don't. So we've had conversations about, there's stereotypes on what we expect sport to look like. We expect to see someone yelling up and down the sidelines, throwing clipboards, all those things at the level. So recognizing that, coaches can be a bit different. We can have different levels, and that can be for both female and male coaches, that not always fitting those stereotypes and breaking down what those are and how we can move sport ahead so that everyone feels included and that they don't have to fit this model and they don't have to both that. So I think there's lots of great things coming, and I'm excited to see what's ahead.
You guys didn't leave a whole lot for us up top here.
I know, it's fresh on my list.
Yeah, just to bounce off what Jessie and Nadine were saying, I think people think that it needs to be structured in order for it to be meaningful, and I think unstructured play is probably the best form of play that kids can have. Grab a group of friends, throw down a couple backpacks, and set up a game. Like, there's nothing better than that. No rules, no referees. Like, well, obviously some rules. Don't go out fouling people, but go out and have some fun with it. I think summer camps is a great way for young coaches to get involved, dip their feet in the water. I know NT runs a summer camp all summer long. Managers is always a great way, like Nadine said. But I wanted to touch on something that Jessie just said, that stereotype is so huge in sport. My first year coaching, they kept saying to me, like, you're not loud enough on the sidelines. And I think as coaches, you know how you connect with your players better than anyone else does. And I think even within our programming, we connect with different players on different levels. Like, somebody may want you to give feedback out loud to them. Others may want you to pull them aside. So I think in the world of sport, we're looking for all different coaches and not just this one model this is the prime example of what a coach should look like. And it goes back to that self-doubt piece that we spoke about, and just knowing that you can bring value to the table and bring value to these kids' lives, I think is huge, whether that be you're yelling up and down the sidelines, which some kids may love, or you're sitting down, relaxing, watching a game because your coaching is done in those 3 hours of practice that week. So that was just something I wanted to touch on. But getting involved, I think, is so huge. Management, junior coaches helping out, even for community hours. Like, if you can reach out and just say, I want to come in and see what the program's about, to get some community hours, I think that's a great way to get involved. Just Googling what's close by and getting into some recreational, I think, is also important as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like, we could look at this from the macro all the way down to the micro level about how people can get involved. But I think, the level that we're at is, as coaches, you can be a coach. It doesn't matter who you are. If you have somewhat of a passion for it, even if you only have a little bit of time to invest into it, like, ask any kid who their favorite coach is and why they were their favorite coach. And probably amongst the top answers, they're going to say, well, they were fun and they were nice. And then everything else, the challenge piece, the level of compete, that can still exist. And as a coach, you can learn that. You can learn the game. You can learn the technical, tactical. You can learn how to communicate better. But if you are willing to show up and just be your authentic self, that's what young people need to see. Based on everything these guys have said, Nadine's talking about, these kids are so anxious all the time because they don't know what they can be and to be accepted. And they need to understand that, like, they can be silly and they can work hard and make mistakes and still be, like, rewarded for that. So I think, if there's any inkling in your mind where you'd like to get involved at a coaching level, please do it, because we need more women, especially, and we need more quality, in across all sports. I think from, like, an equitable lens, kind of higher level, like, we're in a super exciting, location, especially, but time, because Project 8 has the potential to change the game. And for anyone who doesn't know, Project 8 is going to be the professional women's league here in Canada. And, I get these questions all the time from people. Well, do people really watch women's sport? Are they going to watch this? Is it going to make money? And it's people love to ask these naysayer questions because it's going against the norm, right? But we love that. We love that. And we need that because we need women's sport to be valued, And I think there's this misconception that, well, if women get something, then the men will lose something. But that's not the case. The case is that we have, we've accommodated and we've, navigated all these different barriers and different, obstacles throughout the history of sport. And now something like this is an opportunity for everyone to get on board, and it will increase the quality of sport across the spectrum. So I really think that on an individual, find these accounts and learn about them. Be willing to learn and to ask questions. Be willing to challenge people who say, ignorant things about the quality and the impact and, like Erin said, the meaningfulness of women's sport. And be willing to get a little bit uncomfortable in those conversations, because eventually over time, you'll get comfortable very easily being able to stand up for something that you truly believe in, because you will have been a part of it. And you're really paving the way for the next generation of players and coaches, executive board members, and people in all roles that will be involved in really growing this to make it quality sport for especially, our youth coming up.
I feel like we need to throw like a bunch of banners and stuff now. That was such a good way. That was such a good answer. Go Project 8.
Yes. How exciting is that though? And like right in our backyard.
It's amazing, right? Yeah.
Excellent. Look, we said loads there. It's been really good to hear all of your insights. So thank you very much.
Thanks for doing this.